3 gentle taps echoed through the night, hesitant, almost apologetic, as if the knocker feared discovery. Cade Mercer remained motionless at first. He'd been seated beside the fireplace, half listening as winter winds pressed against the timber walls, accompanied by the quiet whisper of a snow-shrouded world preparing for slumber. His weapon rested in its usual spot near the entrance. He waited, listening. The sound returned. Delicate fingers, perhaps, certainly not a grown man's fist. Rising with the deliberate motion of a hibernating beast stirring, he crossed the floor. As the door swung open, the blizzard burst inward, screaming, ravenous and piercing. Within its fury stood a child barely reaching his waist. No tears streaked her face, just tiny hands clutching a tattered wrap while gripping a cloth bag that seemed far too burdensome for her fragile frame. Her face blazed crimson, though not from embarrassment. Her mouth had turned nearly violet. Beyond her, mostly consumed by drifts, lay a woman, collapsed, gasping for air. Her stomach bulged, distended beyond measure. The child raised her face. Her words emerged fragile and weathered by wind. "May my mother birth her child within your home?" Cade gazed downward. Those eyes held too much stillness, too much wisdom, aged beyond her years. He moved aside. "Enter." She required no second invitation. Dragging and rolling her burden inside before seizing her mother's limb with every ounce of strength her small bones possessed. Cade moved swiftly then, gathering the woman as if she weighed no more than fallen leaves. She released only a whimper, a sound so faint it might have escaped from a dying sparrow. Within the warmth, cold cracked away from their flesh like ancient ice splitting from tree bark. Cade positioned the unnamed woman upon his sleeping place near the flames and covered her form with heavy buffalo hide. Violent tremors shook her body. The child's satchel burst open with an awkward crash, revealing cloth napkins, a corroded pot, a single boot, and a damaged Bible missing several pages. The girl positioned herself before the fire, shaking but silent. "Tell me your name," Cade requested, kneeling to tend the flames. She examined her digits as though counting something secret. "Juna May." "And your mother?" Juna's gaze remained downcast. "Marlene?" He pressed no further. The flames required attention, and the mother needed heat. So he provided what assistance he could: heated water, fresh cloth, melted snow to moisten her parched lips. Each time he passed Juna, he sensed her gaze tracking him, evaluating like a young animal observing a stranger circle its territory. Hours. Later, after Marlene's breathing found rhythm and her trembling gave way to rest, Juna occupied a small seat, still shivering. Cade offered her warmed goat's milk in a cup. She accepted it, drank partially, then attempted to share the remainder with her mother. "She won't wake just yet," he said kindly. "Then I'll preserve it." Extended silence stretched between them. Cade found no discomfort in it. The finest individuals he'd encountered were rarely boisterous. Beyond the walls, snowfall continued relentlessly. It drifted at angles, harsh and unforgiving, battering the glass as though proving something. The lantern cast golden light across, the timber illuminating the girl's matted braids and frost-damaged fingers. "Did you travel here on foot?" Cade eventually inquired. Juna nodded. She couldn't walk further. "I remembered the path from earlier times." "Earlier than what?" She studied the flames. "Before they barred us out." He offered no response to that. Later, as Marlene shifted in slumber, Cade glimpsed her forearm slipping from beneath the covering, bruises, fading yet unmistakable. And there, dim but recent, was a burn mark, circular, like a brand. He looked away, not from inability to witness it, but because the rage building in his chest frightened him. He crouched near Juna again, speaking quietly. What brought you to me? The girl studied his boots, then the rifle, then how snow accumulated like silence against the entrance. You haven't posted warnings? Cade blinked. Warnings? Juna nodded. The kind that declare no coloreds or no bastards or no unaccompanied women. You don't display any such signs. His chest constricted. He hadn't erected a sign since laying his wife and child to rest 3 winters past. Perhaps he hadn't wanted visitors. Perhaps he'd been waiting. Marlene awakened near daybreak, disoriented then terrified. Cade maintained distance while Juna applied warm cloth to her forehead and whispered words only daughters understand. By morning, Marlene had spoken one sentence. He will pursue me. Juna had looked at Cade with eyes too steady for 5 years. He always returns, but Mama claims this time he cannot claim her. Cade remained silent, simply gazed through the frost-etched window at the world turning white and deathlike. He retrieved a weathered quilt from the chest, one sewn by hands long buried, and draped it over mother and child. His cabin offered no luxury, no sanctuary, but presently it would suffice. As darkness crept across the sky once more, and shadows returned to claim the corners, Cade resumed his position by the fire. His rifle leaned beside him again, but this time, the warmth touching his skin came not solely from the flames. He observed Juna sleeping curled on the floor, one hand resting upon her mother's belly, and in that stillness, something transformed. Snow outside hissed against the logs. A gust rattled the latch. Then a sound, not knocking this time. A horse, deliberate hoofbeats on snow-packed earth. Cade rose wordlessly, grasped the rifle, and approached the door. Whoever waited had arrived, late, and they carried no child. The night passed without confrontation, though not without vigilance. By dawn, the storm had quieted to whispers. Snow lay like a thick white coverlet over every trail. Cade stood at the window, steaming coffee in hand, watching the sky soften to pale gray. His breath fogged the glass. Somewhere beneath the silence, he could still sense the echo of those hoofbeats from the previous night. But whoever it was hadn't knocked, hadn't called out, just passed by or waited and retreated. Either way, they now knew someone resided here. Behind him, the cabin breathed differently, the kind of quiet that comes when 2 souls have survived something together. Marlene stirred first, groaning softly while cradling her swollen belly. Cade turned, but didn't approach. He brought heated water, clean cloths, a jar of healing salve, but let her ask. She didn't. Instead, she pushed herself upright, bracing against the cot's edge, as though she had no intention of appearing vulnerable. Even though the tremor in her arms betrayed her. Privy's behind the cabin, Cade said quietly. She didn't meet his gaze. Won't be walking anywhere. I'll fetch the chamber pot. Her chin lifted slightly. Not pride, more like defiance worn so long it had become instinct. Cade stepped away to provide privacy. Upon returning, she sat at the bed's edge, eyes closed, arms embracing her belly. The baby was arriving soon. That much was evident. Juna was already awake. She sat on the floor before the hearth, tracing invisible designs in the ash with a spoon's edge. Cade knelt beside her and offered a fresh biscuit, warm, buttery, split down the center. She accepted it but didn't eat. He was nearby last night. Cade didn't respond. He doesn't always announce himself. Sometimes he just observes. Cade glanced toward the window again. The horizon was blank and snow-blind, but Juna's words clung to the room's edges like frost. Your mother tell you to say that? She shook her head. She doesn't speak of him, not during cold spells. The fire popped. Cade sat back on his heels, studying her. Why not? Because cold preserves memories, Juna whispered. Mid-morning arrived. The cabin grew heavy with scents of pine smoke and boiling water. Cade moved with practiced silence, stacking wood, seasoning broth, preparing the space without announcing his preparations. Every action spoke words he'd long forgotten how to say. Marlene still hadn't requested anything. But when the next pain struck, she gripped the bed frame hard enough to splinter wood. Cade stepped forward. She hissed at him. "I'm not some wandering creature. Don't touch me unless requested." He paused, nodded, and withdrew. But he left the basin, the clean towels, the cord boiled and prepared. He positioned everything within reach and said nothing. An hour passed, then another. She cried out only once. That's when Juna raced to Cade, clutching his jacket with both hands. "She requires you." He moved like a tempest breaking. No panic, just power. By the time he reached her, Marlene had sunk halfway to the floor, breathing ragged, perspiration already beading across her brow. "I don't want to perish," she said. I can't endure it again." Cade's voice came low. "You won't die, but you must listen." She looked up at him, then truly looked. He could see every fracture in her armor, every instance she'd been exploited, silenced, discarded. He didn't need her history to feel it. He only needed her eyes. He caught the baby before her scream finished escaping her throat. A boy, blue and bruised and silent for a moment too long. Then he cried, a sound that tore through the cabin like a vow being made. Marlene collapsed backward, sobbing into her own elbow. Cade wrapped the child in flannel and pressed him into her arms. She didn't look at him immediately, but Juna climbed onto the bed, peeking at the squirming bundle. "He's got Mama's nose." Cade sat at the cot's foot, wiping sweat from his brow with a sleeve. "What will you call him?" he asked. Marlene didn't speak. Juna leaned forward and whispered, "Bear." "Bear?" She nodded solemnly. "Because he's strong like you." Cade swallowed the lump rising in his throat. "Are you hungry?" he asked them both. Juna nodded. Marlene didn't. He prepared stew thick with potatoes and wild carrot. Juna consumed 2 portions. Marlene forced down half. Silence reigned, broken only by the baby's soft murmuring. Later, as the sky dimmed toward dusk again, Cade brought additional firewood and left it by the hearth. As he bent, Marlene spoke behind him. "Will you ask my surname?" "No." "Curious. Names hold no importance out here." She stared at him for a long moment. "What does matter?" He turned to her, wiping his hands. "That you survived. That you're warm. That he's breathing." She didn't smile, but something within her shifted, slight, soft, like a page turning in darkness. He reached for his coat. "I'll check the snares before nightfall." Marlene's eyes followed him. "You're kind." "I'm fed up," he said simply. "Different thing." He stepped into the snow, leaving the door slightly ajar. Just enough, just in case. The cold struck like a blow. The wind had shifted eastward, and on the hill above the creek, barely visible through the white, stood a single rider, motionless, watching. Then without sound, the rider turned his horse and vanished into the trees. Cade remained staring long after he was gone. When he stepped back inside, snow in his beard, his rifle in hand, Marlene looked up. "He's returning." Cade didn't answer, but he reached into the drawer beneath the lantern shelf and withdrew a small metal star, weathered, forgotten, a badge. He set it on the table beside the biscuits. "I didn't think I'd need this again," he said. Marlene stared at it, then whispered, "He won't care." "You wore it once." Cade's voice came steady, slow like a fire refusing to die. "He'll care." The creek had frozen overnight, thick, white-veined, still as bone. Cade crouched beside it at dawn, checking the trap lines with experienced hands. No rabbits, just silence. The kind that thickens before something breaks. Back at the cabin, Marlene was sitting upright. Her face was colorless, drawn. But the baby rested quietly at her side, wrapped in a patchwork quilt Cade's wife once made. Juna slept curled near the hearth, a biscuit still clenched in one hand as though it might vanish. Cade set the rifle by the door as the wind shifted again. Sharp, metallic, different. "They'll arrive today," Marlene said, eyes on the door. Cade didn't turn. He just walked over, poured warm water into a basin, and handed it to her with a cloth. "I know." She dipped the cloth, then paused, fingers trembling. "If they see me—" Her voice failed. Cade met her eyes. "They won't." She didn't believe it. He could see that. She looked at him the way wounded animals do. Not angry, not even afraid, just too exhausted to flee again. "I buried a woman once," Cade said quietly. "My wife. They said it was fever. But she never fell ill until after they made her kneel outside in the cold for 2 nights straight, just for being part Lakota." Marlene looked up slowly. Cade shrugged. "People like to pretend God hates what they hate." She nodded once. A silent agreement between two people who had no more patience for liars or saints. The sun had barely cleared the pines when Cade heard them. Horses. 3, maybe 4. Hooves crunching frost. The faint jingle of spurs, idle and cruel. He didn't flinch. Just grabbed the rifle, stepped outside, and pulled the door shut behind him. They came slow, deliberate, as if they owned every tree they passed. The one in front wore a dark coat, dusted with frost. His face was long, sun-weathered, and mean. Not the kind of mean that shouted, the kind that smiled before it struck. "Morning," he said, tipping his hat. "Fine little place you've got here." Cade didn't answer. His hand rested casually on the barrel. The man continued, voice syrup slow. "Name's Harlan Deeks. Marshal, technically, out of Medicine Trail." "Don't care," Cade said flatly. Harlan chuckled. "Fair. We're looking for someone. Woman, young, traveling with a child. Stole from her husband and disappeared. Word is she ran this way." "Word's wrong." Harlan leaned forward in the saddle. "You sure? Cabin's warm? Fire's lit? 1 bed? Looks like?" Cade didn't blink. "Lots of reasons a man might keep a fire." One of the other riders, a greasy-haired kid with twitchy hands, shifted in his saddle. "We could take a look around." "No, you couldn't," Cade said, voice calm as falling snow. Harlan smiled without warmth. "This woman, we're just trying to bring her home. Her man's worried sick. Got himself a marriage certificate and all." Cade said nothing. "You ever read scripture, Mr. Mercer?" "Well, Mr. Mercer, the book says a man's wife is like a well-kept vine. Meek, obedient, sacred." Cade's voice stayed quiet. "Book also says the devil quotes scripture." For a moment, no one moved. Then Harlan exhaled sharply, chuckling again. "I'll be back," he said, "with a warrant. Then we'll see who the law is really for." They turned. The hooves disappeared into the woods. Cade stayed outside a long while after. Inside, Marlene hadn't moved. She sat in the darkest corner of the cabin, wrapped in a blanket, knees pulled up, one hand on the baby's back. Her knuckles were white. "Did they see her?" she asked when Cade finally stepped in. "No." "Did they smell me?" Cade didn't answer. She closed her eyes, lips trembling. "Don't let them see me, please. I can't be seen again." "You won't." "I'm not strong like before. I can't lie well. I can't stand tall. I can't be what he made me." "You don't need to be." She looked up, eyes hollow. "He branded me." Cade nodded slow. "I saw. I couldn't scrub it off. I wouldn't ask you to." Juna stirred then, mumbling, half asleep. Cade walked over and adjusted the blanket around her. "Where's Bear?" she asked. "With your mama," he whispered. The baby made a soft, cooing noise like he agreed. By dusk, Cade had moved them all to the cellar beneath the trapdoor. It smelled of earth and canned peaches and old winters. He left a lantern, quilts, a jar of water. The baby slept against Marlene's chest. Juna curled beside her. Above them, Cade locked the hatch and spread a rug over it. Then he waited. The second visit came at night. This time they didn't knock. They kicked in the back window. Glass shattered across the floorboards. Cade was already up, rifle cocked. He stayed by the hearth, still as stone. The door creaked. A boot stepped in, then another. One figure alone. The greasy-haired kid, sweating, nervous, gun shaking. He looked around too fast. Didn't see Cade. At first, "Boy," Cade said coldly. The kid spun, eyes wild. "Drop it." I didn't mean nothing," the kid stammered. "He made me. Harlan," he said. "Drop it." The pistol clattered to the floor. Cade didn't lower the rifle. "There anyone else outside?" "No. Swear it. I swear he sent me in first. Said if I didn't find her, he'd take my fingers." Cade narrowed his eyes. "That sound like a man worth dying. 4?" The boy's lip quivered. Cade kicked the pistol toward the fire. "Pick it up," he said. The boy hesitated. "What?" "Pick it up, and don't ever point it at a woman again." The kid did as he was told. His hands were shaking. "Now walk. Don't run. Don't look back." He bolted. Cade waited until the hoofbeats faded. Then he shut the door, replaced the boards over the broken window, and poured himself a drink from a bottle he hadn't touched in years. When he lifted the rug and opened the cellar door, Marlene was awake. "He sent a boy." "He'll come next time," she said. "I know." She cradled Bear tighter. Cade sat on the floor beside the open hatch, rifle across his lap. "I was a sheriff once," he said. Marlene's eyes flicked toward him. "Till the town got tired of me arresting their sons, said I was too fair for my own good." She didn't smile, but her voice came quieter. "You going to put the badge back on?" Cade looked into the dark. "Not yet." She reached out and gently touched his hand. "He's not afraid of law." "I know," Cade said steady, "but he's afraid of something." "Yeah," she whispered. Cade's voice was iron and ice. "Me." The sun broke through the clouds for the first time. In days, glinting off snow drifts like spilled silver. Cade was splitting wood behind the cabin, his breath rising in steam, the axe thudding into pine with quiet rhythm. Each swing was clean, measured, like he was carving the silence itself. Inside, Juna stood on a stool, her tiny fingers kneading biscuit dough with stubborn concentration. Flour dusted her cheeks like frost. Marlene watched from the cot, arms curled around the sleeping baby. Her face was softer today, but her eyes still scanned the door between every blink. Juna glanced up. "Is Bear ours now?" Marlene didn't answer at first. Her thumb rubbed slow circles across the baby's quilt. "He was always ours. But are we someone's now?" Juna asked. "Do we get a name again?" Marlene smiled, small and pained. "People gave us names before. They always had a reason. Most weren't kind." Juna wrinkled her nose. "You mean like when they called you?" "Don't," Marlene said gently but firmly. Juna went quiet. The door creaked open, letting in a gust of snow and Cade's frame. He brushed off his coat, stamped his boots, and nodded at the stove. "Smells like supper wants an early start." "We're making biscuits," Juna beamed. "She's doing most of the work," Marlene added. Cade looked at the girl, her hands coated in flour, face full of purpose. "Then it'll be the best batch I've had all winter." Juna's eyes lit up. "Do you got a last name?" Cade blinked. Mercer. Juna turned the word over in her mouth like a seed. Can we be Mercer, too? The question settled over the room like wood smoke. Marlene tensed. Juna! But Cade didn't laugh it off, didn't retreat into silence. He walked over, knelt beside the girl, and gently wiped a streak of flour from her brow. You don't need my name to belong here. Juna frowned. But we don't got one. Cade hesitated. Well, I suppose Mercer's just letters. What matters is where. You lay your head and who listens when you cry. Marlene's eyes shimmered, but she said nothing. Still, Cade added, if you ever need one, Mercer's not bad. Juna looked up at her mama, grinning. We could be the cabin Mercers. Marlene laughed, under her breath. It was the first sound of joy Cade had heard from her that didn't sound borrowed. Later, while Juna napped beside the fire with Bear tucked against her side, Cade stepped outside to tend the livestock. Marlene followed, wrapped in his wife's old shawl. The snow crunched beneath her bare feet. Cade noticed, but didn't mention it. Some things a woman does on purpose to remember she's still alive. You ever have a daughter? She asked quietly. Cade nodded. She would have been 10 this spring. Marlene leaned against the post beside the corral, watching 2 goats huddle near the barn wall. I had a brother once. They hung him for stealing a loaf of bread. Only he didn't steal it. I did, but I was the pretty one, so they figured I was worth something. Cade didn't speak. He let the wind fill the pause. After that, every man I met called me by the last name they gave me. She swallowed hard. Widow, branded property, even Bear's father. He never said my name, just called me what I was worth. And what was that? A horse? 2 chickens? 1 bottle of rye? Cade looked at her for a long moment, the axe forgotten in his grip. You think that's all you're worth now? Marlene shook her head. No, I think I'm worth breath, worth milk, worth sweat. I think I'm worth the sound Juna makes when she sleeps without flinching. Cade's voice came low. Then don't carry their names anymore. She looked at him then, not as a man who'd helped her, but as someone she might begin to believe. Inside, Bear stirred, a mewing cry. Marlene turned to go back in, but Cade caught her wrist gently. If you ever need to leave again, I won't stop you. She blinked. You'd let us go? I'd pack the wagon myself. Make sure you had blankets, water, bread. Freedom should be something a woman can count on. Tears welled but didn't fall. She nodded, then slipped back inside without a word. That night, as they ate stew thick with salt pork and roots, Juna told a story about a rabbit that tricked a wolf into falling into his own trap. Cade listened, smiling faintly, sipping from a tin cup. Marlene laughed, really laughed. Even Bear gurgled as if joining in. Later, while Cade washed the bowls, Marlene sat in the rocking chair, brushing Juna's hair as she drifted to sleep. Her strokes were slow, rhythmic, like a prayer. Do you think you'll ever leave this place? She asked. Cade dried his hands on a cloth. I did once. World didn't give me anything worth staying for. She met his eyes. Maybe it will now. He didn't answer, just returned to the hearth and stirred the fire. As the last flame danced up the chimney, Cade stepped outside for one final breath of air. The sky was starless, the cold wet and heavy, and in the snow beneath the porch, the dog was dead, shot clean between the eyes. No struggle, no tracks, just one thing left behind. A broken horseshoe rusted at the heel and a strip of leather stamped with a single word, property. Cade picked it up, fingers tightening. Behind him, Juna stirred in her sleep and whispered something he couldn't hear. But Marlene heard. She rose from the rocker, face gone white. She didn't need to read it. She already knew the name they used when they wanted to remind her who she'd been. The wind howled louder than the wolves that used to circle this land, rising like a hymn for things buried, but not gone. Cade stood at the edge of the porch, rifle slung across his chest, eyes fixed on the trees. The sun hadn't yet broken the horizon, but the darkness no longer felt empty. Inside the cabin, Marlene sat beside the fire, her body coiled like a spring, wound too tight. She cradled Bear in her arms, rocking slow, eyes not on the child, but the door. Juna knelt by the cellar hatch, packing the quilt down over the lantern. Cade had shown her how, told her not to make a sound, not to cry. "You're brave," he'd said, "like a pine in deep winter. You don't bend, you just wait." Footsteps cracked through snow. 4 men this time, one dismounted. Harlan. He didn't knock. He didn't need to. Cade stepped off the porch, boots crunching frost, stopping 6 paces from the man, rifle lowered, but not forgotten. "You kill my dog?" Cade asked. Harlan's lips curled. He barked. "You touch my fence?" "Didn't like the way it looked at me." "You leave this place now," Cade said quietly, "or I'll bury you so deep the snow won't find you." Harlan grinned. "You still think you're the law?" "I don't have to be law. I just have to be right." Behind him, the door creaked. Marlene stepped out barefoot, baby in her arms, hair loose and wild from fear and heat and long nights with no sleep. "You shouldn't have come," she said. Harlan's voice dropped. "You're mine." "No," she whispered. "I was bought, then used, then left. But I ain't ever been yours." "You ran." "I crawled." "You've got my child." Marlene's eyes narrowed. "He's not yours. He never will be." "You sure about that?" "I am now." Harlan's eyes flashed. "Then you'll die with him." He reached for his pistol. Cade moved first. The rifle didn't bark. It roared. One of Harlan's men fell back, a clean hole through the shoulder. The others scattered, but Cade was already crouched low, using the porch posts for cover, firing. Again. Wood shattered. Snow exploded. A second man screamed and dropped. Juna screamed from inside the cabin. Marlene backed toward the door, shielding Bear with her arms, her body blocking the entry. Cade reloaded, stepped forward, and then he saw Harlan, half-crouched, using a tree as cover, eyes locked on Marlene like a predator denied his prey. Harlan raised his gun toward the doorway. Cade fired, but Harlan was fast. Not fast enough. The ice bullet took him in the side, but not deep. He stumbled, then roared like a wild dog and charged. Cade dropped the rifle and tackled him mid-run, both men crashing into the snow, fists and elbows and knees landing with bone-cracking thuds. Cade landed a punch, then another. Blood bloomed across the snow. Harlan spat in his face and clawed, for a knife hidden beneath his coat. Steel flashed. Cade caught his wrist, twisted hard, too hard. Something snapped. Harlan screamed. "You beat her!" Cade growled, breath ragged. "You branded her!" "She was mine." "You don't own people. You don't get to rewrite the world." Harlan hissed. "You ain't nobody anymore." Cade pressed the broken wrist into the snow until Harlan shrieked. "Then why are you bleeding on my land?" Cade drew back, let the man writhe in his own agony. Behind them, Marlene stood barefoot in the snow, still holding Bear. She didn't flinch, didn't cry. Juna appeared beside her, holding the old badge in her small hands like a talisman. Cade saw it and stood. He turned back to Harlan, now half-crawling, face twisted in pain. "You come back," Cade said, "and I won't use a bullet next time." "You ain't got the law on your side." "No," Cade said. "I've got the truth and a family." He turned his back. Harlan didn't move. He knew better now. By the time Cade stepped into the cabin again, his knuckles were bloodied, his shirt torn. He smelled of smoke and sweat and resolve. Juna ran to him and buried her face in his coat. "Is it over?" she asked. "For now." Bear cried softly, sensing the tension had broken but not yet cleared. Marlene laid him in the crib Cade had carved from spare wood that winter and stood facing him. Her feet were red from the cold, her fingers trembling. "You didn't kill him." "No." "Why?" "Because you don't bury what you're not done healing from. That part's yours." She closed the space between them slowly, placed a hand on his chest. "He took so much, and now he can't anymore." "No," Cade said softly. "He can't." Juna stood between them. "Can we stay?" Cade knelt to her level. "If you want." She nodded hard, tears brimming. "Even if we're not Mercers yet? You were the second you walked through that door. Later that night." Cade stood outside, watching the moon rise over the snow. Marlene joined him, wrapped in a blanket, Bear asleep in her arms. "I kept thinking he'd come and take me," she said. "But you're still here," Cade said. "He tried to break everything." "You can't break what you never made." They watched the wind trace across the trees. "He called me property." Cade shook his head. "He never even saw you." "And you?" "I see you." She rested her head against his shoulder. "You didn't ask for this." "No," Cade murmured. "But maybe I was made for it." He looked down at the woman beside him, her strength stitched together from pain and persistence. At the baby that shouldn't have lived, at the girl who saved her mother with nothing but a whisper. And for the first time in years, he felt warm in the middle of winter. Inside, the fire crackled. Outside, the cold stayed, but it didn't take anything else. Not tonight. Not anymore. Which city are you watching our content from? Please share in the comments and don't forget to subscribe to our channel.